Hey, and welcome to another episode of the Girls to the Front podcast. I promise that this week there will be no audio issues. I am going to seamlessly upload this and put this out into the universe, and there's going to be no accidental mono upload, and there's going to be no accidental cutting off loads of what I'm saying. I'm going to do it. This is the week. In 2 weeks, I'm going to break that cycle today. I am on my own today. So for the first time in a while, and aside from the recaps, this is an episode that I'm doing purely by myself. The recaps feel a little different because I feel like they have a lot of structure to them. So I'm going back to the OG way of just talking to myself about different topics, which feels a little strange because I've had some incredible people to speak to over the last few months. So I've got no one to bounce back and forth with. So all you've got is my lovely, dulcet, Muppet-like, beaker, crow-like tones without any break from someone with a nicer voice than mine. So I put out on Instagram if anyone had any questions for me to answer in this podcast episode, and some lovely humans got back to me. So I'm going to try and answer these in the best way that I can. So let's just go straight into it without further ado. Okay, question number 1. What differences do you see from starting your podcast to now? So what differences do I see from starting my podcast to right now? This is a good one. Okay, so aside from the pretty obvious, so for example, the first podcast episode I ever did, I overthought it, got super anxious and super nervous before I did it. And I really let that get in the way of just having like some level of flow. I think I highly scripted it as well to begin with. So that first episode doesn't feel like me. And I think if you listen to episode 1 to this episode, which I think is episode 44, you can physically hear how comfortable I get talking to myself. It starts off, and there are even some episodes I think later on where you can hear it, but there is a lot in the initial, I think first 20 episodes where I'm trying really hard, like not to swear or not to say anything that I think would be turned a different way. So I feel like I'm scripting a lot of it, and I'm trying to run everything through a filter while I'm also trying to on the fly talk about stuff. So I'm super proud of those first 20 episodes. I will never remove them from the Girls to the Front catalogue, but I think you can see a definite switch when I start becoming way more comfortable with just talking and stopping putting that filter on. Because for a while I just felt like I couldn't swear, but that's actually not an authentic version of me because I fucking love to swear. So aside from like not feeling very nervous, I've also become way less precious. So that doesn't mean that I can't be asked. I feel like less pressure sometimes when I hear that in my mind. When people are like, oh, I've just become less precious, I think maybe there are connotations around not wanting to try. But that's not the case at all. I've become less precious in terms of sometimes I just press record and I have absolutely no idea where it's going to go. I become way less precious about there having a rigid structure and format. I think that's also in turn helped by the fact that I tried to restructure them slightly. So I'd have one of me talking, one with a guest, and then one with a recap. So that's really, really helped in me kind of being able to be less precious and less overwhelmed by me constantly having to deliver stuff. And it's just become like way less scary to do. The only reason Girls to the Front, the podcast, exists is because I started a podcast with Owen in Owen's back garden in lockdown. So we started Chopwood Carry Water at some point during the lockdowns, and with the intention that they would exist to show people that starting a podcast is super simple to do and everyone should have a podcast, which is a belief that I still have right now. So if you're listening to this, you should start your own podcast. You've got so much value. Just press record. Chopwood Carry Water started with just a camera in a garden. We used to do it on a Friday morning. We'd be interrupted by birds, we'd be interrupted by the bin men, we would be interrupted by a whole host of animals. But the whole point was just creating something that we were really proud of and that we loved, to show that it can exist. And Girls to the Front, this would not exist if I hadn't have done that. So in some way, starting a podcast to show people that anyone can start a podcast also helped me start my own podcast. But it's a very different feel to it. So initially, with the Chop with Carry Water ones, there was someone to bounce off and there's a conversation to be had, and I can take a lead from Owen, or Owen can take a lead from me, and we can ask each other questions and get each other to talk around different topics. And yeah, I feel like that format, even though that was super scary and nerve-wracking to start with, we got into like a really good flow with it, and we talk about a whole host, and there's so many episodes. Like, I am so proud of them too. So if you get a chance, please go listen to them. Chop with Carry Water still exists. We still record stuff. So yeah, I would go visit those episodes now, because otherwise you're not ever going to be caught up in time for the next episode to come out. So when I first started this by myself, it felt really scary to do. So I was having to like go through it all over again. But now I've got to a point where I am actually okay with talking to myself in my office and it just being me. So there's some like pretty obvious differences, like in the way that I approach them and the way that I feel about them physically. In terms of other stuff, I've become really aware of how I talk, and I've become, when I listen to them back, I've become really heightened about the sound of my voice. I don't know if this is a good or a bad one, but it has really helped me in lots of other areas of my life. So listening to this back, sometimes I can hear myself talking really fast and not taking any breaks. I feel myself, or I can hear myself talking in loops sometimes. So if I've got a point that I really want to get across, instead of me just saying it and then pausing and then moving on, I can hear myself trying to navigate the same point over and over again. So it's just taught me a lot about communicating and communicating effectively. Obviously, this is still a work in progress. So still trying to do that, but it's taught me so much about the ways that I communicate. It's become a bit like a diary for me too. So when I started it, I think I wanted the podcast to be like disseminating information, and all the podcasts that I would oh my goodness, right, start a sentence again. All of the podcasts that I was consuming at the time of me starting this one by myself were like information generating podcasts. So there would be a pretty hefty script, and now knowing what I know about doing it by yourself, like it would have been a lot of work for them. It's a lot of work for them to generate the script, go through it, do all the research, and it became like, I think I started off with that, and then the biggest difference has been that it's evolved completely beyond that. So instead of me disseminating information, it's actually been way more about me documenting my day-to-day and what I consume, what I relate to, and then being able to like put that back out into the world, as opposed to me positioning myself as someone that kind of knows best. I feel really sick when I actually think about what I thought I wanted the podcast to be, and now knowing what it is now, I'm much more comfortable. And I feel like this version of the podcast, as it stands, is the most authentic version of me. Because I have also said in previous episodes that I find being an expert and the idea of being an expert really uncomfortable for lots of different reasons. And people that call themselves experts, I find it really uncomfortable to think of them that way for so many reasons. But I feel like that's been a really key difference, is like what I imagined it was going to be in its head to what it actually is. but being much happier with what it is. And as a result of that, I have people reaching out, and I think when I first started it, I kind of thought I would just talk to myself. People might consume it and then just leave it. But especially in the last few months, I've had lots of people reach out, and I had someone reach out that I don't know say that they listen to the podcast, and that was fucking huge. So I think that's been a big difference, is like knowing that I'm not necessarily just always talking to my friends and to my peers, but there are other people listening that don't know me. So having that much more authentic expression of me, where I talk about like me just documenting my life and talking about thoughts, feelings and situations and stuff like that. So that feels like a big difference, but I'm glad it took that turn. And then the guests, the people I've spoken to on the podcast have, I guess it's not really like a difference I've seen, but it's like the difference, acknowledging the difference that other people can make in your world and in other people's world. Having those in-depth conversations with people that I care about and people that I look up to and people that I surround myself with daily, but then getting to talk to them in a way that's actually quite vulnerable and asking them to reflect on their life and then write down the 3 things that they wish they knew when they were younger. Like the difference that it's made to me mentally has been huge, because you realize very quickly that you're not alone with how you feel, and that there are actually so many of us. Like one of the common themes I've noticed amongst the people that I've spoken to is the idea that lots of us are uncomfortable stepping into our like most authentic expression of ourselves, or we are constantly worried about the perceptions of others and we get really caught up in having to play a role. So it's made a huge difference to me to know that I have not been alone, and I have never been alone with those thoughts. So that's been incredible. And I hope that those people that I've spoken to and I've had on the podcast have also made a significant difference to the way that you think about yourself too, whether you resonated with those things as well or not. But I think it's really clear that everyone has so much to say and so much value. So I'm just really grateful that they said yes. And I'm really grateful that I can platform those humans so that A, they have something that exists forever about them talking about themselves, and B, so that they can hear themselves back and that they can have a moment to remember what they need to hear. So yeah, okay, that's the differences I have seen since starting the podcast. Okay, question number 2. What's the aim for next year? So I'm going to interpret this as what's the aim for the next 12 months. So, can I say take over the world? Can I say world domination? That's the goal though. The goal is to change the world. The Frightened Rabbit lyrics, really sit with me a lot around, while I'm alive, I'll make tiny changes to Earth. I just hope that everything that is Girls to the Front helps move the needle forward in terms of changing the world for young girls and changing the world for people that want to advocate for Girls to the Front or be a part of Girls to the Front and just have that mentality and that ethos. I want to create more workshops. I want to be a part of more workshops, doing more stuff, speaking about Girls to the Front, putting myself out there. I want to create more resources. I want to co-produce stuff all of the time. So I want to platform loads of different voices. I want to have young girls involved in creating zines. I want young girls to be involved in creating resources. I want to be able to react and adapt to what the wants and needs of young people are. So, for example, the other day when I was running a Girls to the Front in-person session, the girls came in and I don't know what had happened that day, but they'd all had sex ed that day, and them all coming in and like demanding better from their sex ed, like the sex and relationships education in school was like some of the most like fueling stuff I have experienced. Like hearing like 8 young girls come in fired up about a subject is fucking phenomenal. So it gave me loads of like fuel to then be like, I have to create stuff around this. I have to disseminate what they're telling me. I have to raise the volume on what they want and need from that. So doing way more of that. And I think I've just got to get out of my own way. I've got to stop overthinking. I've got to stop putting loads of pressure on myself to do all of this. I am recording this episode after I've just had a phone call with Owen where this is literally what we've spoken about. The idea of getting out my own way and asking for help and not putting so much pressure on myself to be the change, but to be part of the change by existing and putting myself out there and being authentic and just spreading the message to anyone, not just young girls, but to anyone that can help spread that message further. It's way more about creating a network of people that all get girls to the front and all want to take girls to the front forward than it just creating stuff for young girls who may not ever see it because they're being gatekept by older people. So I wish there was like a point, like a goal, like a tangible quantitative goal, because that would be really neat and tidy, but there's not, because I don't know what number to put on that. But it's just to continue this and change the world, set some stuff on fire, just keep turning up the volume, using my voice, being my own brand, and existing, and above all, being a lighthouse. Like since starting this podcast, I got a fucking lighthouse tattooed on me as a constant reminder that, oh God. Do I edit this bit out now? Because I'm full crying. No, as like a constant reminder that I want to exist, and everything I do day to day, I just want to show people that it's possible. So yeah, just keep doing that. Okay, let's change. I'm probably still going to cry in the next bit. Okay, let's move on. Next question. Okay, advice for 5 years' time. So what advice am I going to give to Mickey in 5 years' time? This is... Right, so when I read this question, I was like, fuck you, this is really hard. Because I don't know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years' time. Like, I might have moved back to Hereford in 5 years' time. So I started thinking about it way more generically because I got really overwhelmed by what I'd be doing in 5 years' time. So my advice to me in 5 years' time is I don't think anyone's gonna be surprised by this. Time is finite. You gotta fucking do shit. You're 5 years older. So you've just proved that time is finite because you're aging. So you got to fucking do shit. Like, you've got to keep trying to be authentic and keep pursuing being the most, like, keep pursuing being your own brand. Like, double down on that. And keep checking in. There will always be a 15-year-old Mickey that you need to check in with. So keep checking in. You don't get old, like when you get older, you don't get wiser. So just remember, you don't have it all figured out just because you are now older than you were when you're making this podcast. Fuck, imagine I listen to this back when I'm 35. But yeah, just keep checking in. You're not wiser because you're older. So you have to keep remembering that you're a work in progress and being kind to yourself, because you are a work in progress, and you need to keep trying to educate yourself and being open to learning. And then the other thing I wrote down about myself in 5 years' time is just because I've had a big epiphany this year around how I give myself to people full 1,000%. So if you come into my life and I think you're a really cool human, I will dedicate everything to helping you and being there for you and love you with so much of myself. This has become really testing this year because I have done that with people and then they have just exited my life without any warning, and some of those people have exited in really hurtful ways. So I just want to remind myself in 5 years' time that you can still love people wholly, like with every ounce of yourself. But remember that people do change or people don't change. But that shouldn't stop you from loving those people, because you will regret not going all in, because that's just who you are as a human. It doesn't make you any less of a human to love and then people leave. You want to be proud of the effort and the commitment you have to people, and knowing that you did your best in that situation. You did that your best for that person, and if they leave, that is not a reflection on you. It is a reflection on their situations and circumstances. So that's a reminder, because it might happen again. It could happen again. But I think the biggest thing is the people that have left your life are not a reflection on you. You did your best, and you can't say that you didn't try. So that's my advice for me in 5 years' time. And then the question flips this on its head. What would Mickey in 5 years' time say to me now? So I think a 35-year-old Mickey would say, time is fucking finite. Get after it. The thing I wrote down is you'll never be as young as you are now. So why not? Do what you can. Make mistakes. Fail fast, fail often. Try things. Adapt. Reflect. Keep coming back. Keep doing it over and over again until you find the perfect algorithm for success. But I am never going to be younger. So I'm just going to age now. I'm just going to get older. And my room to fail and my room to make mistakes is gonna get smaller. And I mean that in like a physical sense. Like, there is only so much time I have dicking about in the gym before I start hitting my back coughing. No, that's never going to happen to me. But there is only so many years I've got left of just falling over and being able to bounce back up, you know? So do all of those things now. Like, fucking just go all in on stuff. And yeah, just keep going. Yeah, I want to make sure that 35-year-old Mickey also would be just as proud as a 15-year-old Mickey. So yeah, just relentlessly pursuing and being and doing, I think. Yeah. So that took a turn that I didn't think it was going to take. I did not think I was going to have a cry halfway through that. My word. I fucking love having emotions. And I think having big emotions is a superpower. And the fact that I can feel stuff, I've spoken about this before, but like the idea that I can feel stuff so deeply is something that I am both grateful for but resent at the same time. And my ability to control when that switches on and off is really, really hard. Like, I feel great today. I feel in a great mood. The minute I started talking about being a lighthouse, I just started crying. I wish I could say I could control it better, but I can't. Maybe 35-year-old, maybe my advice for me in 5 years' time is to harness your emotions a little better. I was actually recommended a podcast that I should listen to. Oh my God, I need to credit it. So Ridian recommended it to me through the Discord. If you're not in the Discord, please join the Discord. It's amazing conversations with people. It's showing up for yourself and others. It's existing. We put stuff in there all the time about podcast, checking in. People just share stuff and it's amazing. Just being part of a community of like-minded people that are showing up for themselves and other people. So if you're not in the Discord, message me for a link and I'll put you in there. But Ridian recommended one. The podcast is called This Stuff Works. And it is the podcast episode is with LaTonya Sumpter. And basically, it is two women talking about their experiences of leadership. But in the podcast episode, they say a sentence that like really hit me hard. It's around emotions. So the idea that emotion is data, not drivers. That way of looking at it gave me a lot to think about. I've heard it in different iterations before, but I think hearing it in 4 words was huge. But the idea that emotions give you like data around how you feel about certain situations, but being able to reverse engineer why you feel that way and what are the causes of those things, as opposed to just that immediate reaction that you get with emotions. So yeah, it was just an interesting thing that I discovered this week through that podcast. Not this week, the other week. Through that podcast, and something that has really stuck with me because I feel like I am an emotionally fueled person. And I feel like it is very obvious. My emotions are very obvious. I think this is both a good and a bad thing. I love that people can see when I'm happy, and I love that people can see when I'm really content and like really feed off that. But equally, it's really, I don't know, like I hate the idea that people can just look at me and know that I'm really struggling or really sad, because I think that gives off an energy that some people don't need. And I know that sometimes I'll fill rooms with it because it's just how I outwardly project my emotions. So yeah, I'm just going to share that at the end of this podcast because I thought it was interesting. I don't know where that came from. Oh yeah, my ability to not be able to control my emotions then and there. Okay, so thank you so much if you gave me a question to answer. They were all really fucking hard. So next time I put a call out for questions, can you all ask me easier stuff, please? Thank you. Oh, I don't even fucking know. But yeah, anyway. So I'm going to leave you this week with a song that I've been listening to on repeat. So Paramore's All We Know Is Falling album that was released in 2005 was the soundtrack to many of my bus journeys to school. There is a nostalgia I have, and I really remember finding Paramore, thinking Hayley Williams was the coolest human that has ever existed. I remember watching all of her music videos thinking that she was like this incredible, I still think this, but thinking she was the coolest human. I remember seeing her in the New Found Glory video for Kiss Me, their cover of Sixpence None the Richer, and being like, she's in there for like 2 seconds. And even then I was like, oh my God, this person. So yeah, I then remember seeing Paramore. I think it must have been on like Kerrang or something, or seeing them in a Kerrang magazine when I was younger. And then finding that album, finding the track list, downloading it off LimeWire, and then putting it, and then just non-stop listening to it. So I have been listening to Paramore. Paramore are frequently on in the gym. And they are also in my TikTok algorithm. So I'm listening to them quite a lot of the time. But this week I revisited that album. And the song I'm going to pick is Here We Go Again, because that was one of the songs I had on loop. So the next time you're probably going to hear from me is the July recap episode, because I left June's recap so late. I'm now on to the July recap. And it will have either been my birthday or be approaching my birthday. So, yeah, I'll see you either in the next few days, or I'll be 31 by the time I next record the next episode.